Ah, my dear friend, let me sit back and loosen this old cardigan a bit, because this conversation we're about to have, it's not one you'll hear at the dinner table or at a polite Sunday church gathering. No, this one's raw, personal, and, believe it or not, pretty damn funny, too. You know me. I'm Paul, 80 years old, still kicking, still learning, and still trying to figure out how this body of mine works after all these years. And today, I want to talk to you about something that most men my age won't dare open their mouths about. I can already see you grinning and blushing, but don't you hide that smile, because you asked for honesty, and I promised you that I'd always give it. The topic? Masturbation, or as the old fellas at the barber shop used to whisper when they thought no one was listening, taking care of business. Now, when I was a young buck, the whole world made it sound like something shameful. My parents wouldn't even say the word out loud. The doctors back then, some of them went as far as saying it would make you go blind, weak, or turn your palms hairy. If that were true, I'd have been walking around with a seeing-eye dog before I hit 25, and my barber would have had to trim my hands instead of my head. But here I am, 8 decades old, eyesight still sharp enough to catch you rolling your eyes at me right now. So let me tell you something. Younger Paul never knew half the truth about this subject, and many men, even the ones with gray hair and tired knees, still carry myths and shame about it. That's why I'm here, as your 80-year-old buddy, to spill the secrets. 5 secrets about masturbation older men wish they'd known earlier. Secrets that can change the way you look at yourself, your health, and even your happiness in these golden years. And don't worry, I'll lace it with some jokes. Because if we can't laugh about something as natural as scratching your own itch, then what's the point of living to 80? Now, before we get into the first secret, let me set the mood for you. Imagine me, 16 years old, living in a tiny town where the only source of information about sex came from my buddy's dad's hidden magazines and the occasional biology class diagram. We thought we were breaking the law just by looking at a naked drawing. And when it came to pleasuring ourselves, it was like living in a haunted house. We were convinced if we did it too much, lightning would strike, or our mothers would somehow just know. My mother had this magical radar, you see. She could sniff out trouble before it happened. If I came down for breakfast looking too cheerful, she'd narrow her eyes at me like, "What have you been up to?" That fear and guilt carried into adulthood, and that's the tragedy. So many of us older men went through life not knowing how healthy, normal, and downright beneficial self-pleasure really is. We wasted years thinking it was dirty, when in fact, science now tells us it's one of the keys to keeping the body and mind well-oiled. So here I go, friend. Buckle up, grab yourself a cup of tea, or maybe wine, I won't judge, and let's dive into the 5 masturbation secrets older men wish they'd known earlier. And trust me, this isn't just for men. You'll learn something too, because if you've got brothers, husbands, friends, or grandsons, these are truths that matter. Secret number 1, and this one still makes me laugh whenever I think about it. Masturbation is not only normal, it's necessary maintenance, like changing the oil in your car. If you skip too many oil changes, that engine starts making funny noises. Same with the body. Men who keep it locked up, bottled in, suffer more stress, more tension, and even more prostate problems. I wish I knew that back in my 30s, when I was running around thinking being a real man meant being too busy or too tired. I remember when I was around 45, working long hours, stressed to the bone, snapping at my wife for no reason. My body was tense like a bowstring. If I had only known then that a little self-care could calm my nerves, improve my sleep, and even lower my blood pressure, I might have saved myself from years of grumpiness. My wife used to joke, "Paul, you've got two moods, tired or cranky. Can't you find a third one?" Well, now I know there was a third mood. I just didn't let myself use it. And that leads us to secret number 2. Masturbation isn't just about release. It's about learning your own body. Older men, especially after 60, start experiencing changes in their plumbing. Things don't stand as tall or stay as firm as they used to. You know what I mean. And instead of panicking, men could use solo time as a way to understand these changes, adjust, and even improve performance. It's like test driving the car before taking it on the highway. When I hit 60, I'll admit I had a crisis. Things weren't working the way they used to, and I thought my days of intimacy were over. That's when my doctor told me, "Paul, your body is changing, but it's not broken. You just need to get to know it again." And let me tell you, that advice saved me. I started experimenting, learning what worked and what didn't, without the pressure of a partner staring at me like, "Is it working yet?" And here's a little engagement moment for the folks listening. If you're still with me, do me a favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and maybe subscribe to this channel. Not because I need the validation, though at 80, it feels nice to know someone out there is listening, but because these conversations matter. If we can get more people laughing, learning, and opening up about topics like this, maybe we can finally kill the shame that's been haunting us for generations. Now, secret number 3, and this one still gets me excited. Masturbation can actually prevent certain health problems. That's right. All those years we thought it was making us sick, it could have been keeping us healthy. Prostate health, for instance. Regular ejaculation helps flush out the prostate, reducing the risk of buildup and even lowering the chances of prostate cancer. Imagine that. The very thing men were scared of doing could have saved their lives. When I was 70, I lost a dear friend named Harold. He was too embarrassed to ever talk about these things, and he avoided seeing the doctor until it was too late. He died of prostate cancer. I sometimes wonder if, had he known these truths earlier, maybe things would have turned out differently. That's why I share this, not to be crude, but because silence has cost too many of us too much. Secret number 4, and I love this one, is that masturbation helps with sleep. And at 80, sleep is like gold. Do you know how hard it is to get 8 hours straight when your bladder keeps waking you up at 3 a.m.? But here's the thing. After release, the body produces chemicals that calm the brain, reduce anxiety, and lull you to rest. Forget counting sheep. This is the real deal. I wish someone had told me that in my 50s when insomnia was making me look like a zombie. And finally, secret number 5, the emotional benefit. Masturbation isn't just physical, it's emotional self-care. For older men who feel lonely, disconnected, or less desirable, it's a reminder that their bodies still work, that pleasure is still theirs to claim, and that life hasn't shut the door on intimacy. I can't tell you how many men I've spoken to who carry shame, thinking they're too old for desire. But at 80, I'm living proof. That part of you never dies. It just needs kindness, patience, and sometimes a little privacy. Now, friend, I know you're probably giggling at half the things I've said, but underneath the laughter, there's truth. If I could go back and talk to young Paul, I'd say don't waste time feeling guilty. Learn your body, respect it, enjoy it, and never let anyone make you feel ashamed of being human. And to anyone listening out there, whether you're 60, 70, or 80, remember this: it's never too late to learn, laugh, and love yourself a little better. Stick with me, because I've only just warmed up. I've got more stories, more laughs, and deeper lessons tied to these 5 secrets, because behind each one of them, there's a real-life experience, a failure, and a victory that shaped me into the old man you're talking to today. All right, friend, let me lean forward a bit, because this next part is where the meat of the story is. The first half was like dipping our toes into the water. Now we're going for a full swim. And don't worry, I brought a life jacket. At 80 years old, I know better than to dive in without one. Now, I already told you the 5 big secrets, but here's the thing about secrets. They always come with stories. And if I don't tell you the stories, then these secrets just sound like something you'd read in a medical pamphlet in a doctor's waiting room. And who wants that? No, you need the laughter, the mistakes, the raw humanity of it. Otherwise, it doesn't sink in. So let's rewind a bit to that first secret, that masturbation is maintenance. I wish I could take you back to when I was a young husband in my 30s. My wife, bless her heart, was working night shifts as a nurse, and I was stuck at home with stress, a glass of whiskey, and a restless body. Back then, I thought handling myself when she wasn't around was some kind of betrayal. I carried Catholic guilt heavier than a sack of bricks. But what actually happened? I grew irritable, distant, and even resentful. One night, I was pacing the kitchen, and my wife came home, exhausted, still in her scrubs. She sat at the table and said, "Paul, you're wound tighter than a drum. You need to find a release." I thought she meant a vacation. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "No, I mean that release. Do you really think I don't know?" My face turned redder than a tomato in July. And you know what? She was right. She gave me permission that night to stop treating my body like it was some kind of ticking time bomb. That was my first real lesson, that taking care of myself wasn't betrayal, it was maintenance, like tightening the bolts on a leaky pipe before it bursts. Now, let's swing back to the second secret, learning your own body. Oh, friend, this one became especially important in my 60s. You see, erections aren't the unshakable soldiers they used to be. At 25, I could have saluted the flag just by looking at a pretty face in a magazine. By 65, the flag wasn't rising unless I gave it a pep talk first. I remember sitting in my doctor's office, nervous as a kid waiting for the school principal. I told him, "Doc, things aren't working down there the way they used to." He laughed and said, "Paul, that's normal. You just need to get reacquainted with your body." I felt like he had just told me to start dating myself again. And that's what I did. I experimented. Different times of the day, different thoughts, sometimes even laughter. Yes, laughter. You'd be surprised what loosens up when you stop being so serious about it. And over time, I learned that intimacy wasn't just about performance. It was about understanding. That self-knowledge later gave me confidence with a partner. I wasn't fumbling in the dark. I knew the map because I'd studied it. And here's where I turn to you, my dear friend, and to everyone listening. If you're nodding along thinking, "Paul, this sounds too personal," well, that's the point. If an 80-year-old man can admit this with a smile, you can talk about it too. So don't forget, hit that like button, drop a comment about your thoughts, maybe even subscribe if you want more real talk like this. Let's spread a little honesty in a world too full of shame. Now, on to the third secret, prostate health. This one's not as funny, but it's too important to skip. I'll never forget when my friend Harold used to brag that he'd never touched himself since high school. He thought it made him more of a man. But deep down, I think he was scared. Years later, when he developed prostate problems, I wanted to shake him and say, "Harold, the very thing you avoided might have kept you healthier." Science says regular release clears out toxins, keeps the system flowing, and even reduces the risk of cancer. But society told men like Harold that it was dirty. And that lie costs lives. I don't want that for the next generation. If I can save even one person from that fate by speaking up, then all my embarrassing confessions are worth it. Now the fourth secret, sleep. Now here's where I've got a hilarious memory. I was 72, dealing with insomnia so bad I looked like a raccoon. My daughter said, "Dad, maybe try warm milk." I tried it, and all I got was gas. My son-in-law suggested herbal tea. That only made me pee 3 times in the night. Finally, I stumbled across an article that suggested release as a natural sleep aid. I laughed out loud. At my age, I thought, what, am I supposed to be a teenager again? But I tried it, and my friend, I slept like a baby. The next morning, I woke up whistling, frying eggs, dancing in the kitchen. My daughter raised her eyebrow and said, "Dad, you seem well rested. Did the warm milk finally work?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Yeah, let's just say I found a better recipe." She still doesn't know what I meant, and frankly, let's keep it that way. Finally, the fifth secret, the emotional benefit. This is the deepest one of all, because at 80, I know what loneliness feels like. I know what it's like to watch your partner pass away, to sleep in a cold bed, to feel like your days of being touched and desired are over. That loneliness can eat you alive if you let it. But self-intimacy reminded me that my body still belongs to me, that pleasure isn't off the table just because of a number on my birthday cake. It gave me a sense of connection with myself that softened the loneliness, and it helped me realize something. Intimacy doesn't always need another person. Sometimes it's about cherishing yourself enough to say, I'm still here and I still matter. So, my dear friend, if there's one lesson to carve into your heart, it's this. Never be ashamed of being human. Whether you're 16 or 80, desire is a gift, not a curse. And self-love, both the quiet kind and the physical kind, isn't a weakness, it's survival. Now, let me leave you with this thought. When I die, and don't worry, I'm not planning on it anytime soon, I don't want to be remembered as the man who kept silent out of shame. I want to be remembered as the old guy who dared to laugh, share, and tell the truth. Because the truth, as awkward as it sometimes feels, has the power to free us. So let's keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts, your experiences, your laughter, and remember, whether you're 60 or 80, life hasn't passed you by. You just need to grab it with both hands, sometimes literally.